When this excavator cracks up a rock, the miner finds something shocking. At the Canadian Millennium Mine in Alberta, no miner could believe their eyes. Shawn Funk was trembling only moments before. He had been using his excavator to dig at the location. Suddenly, an object appeared out of the rock in front of him. What was the mysterious object that popped out of the rock? And what does Shawn plan to do with it? Join us as we delve into the shocking discovery a miner made when digging up rocks. The accidental discovery. Shawn loved using his hands to work in the outdoors. His day in the mine began like any other. Unlike many other mine workers, he did not have to descend deep underground for his current position. He had been a miner for 12 years and had worked in a variety of mining roles. Instead, he was operating an excavator to dig into a bank and remove sediment so that the rock formation beneath could be mined. This allowed him to simultaneously remove large rocks and a lot of dirt, cleaning it far more quickly than in any other manner. Driving an excavator can be a lot of fun. He had heard about people finding cool stuff while digging, but had never experienced it himself when he did find something. It was normally garbage that had to be disposed of. He wasn't thinking that he would ever make any sort of amazing discovery. When the mining portion began, he was merely carrying out his duties as a rock mover. They would make up for it with an abundance of profitable discoveries. Being able to remove soil layer by layer, and knowing that each layer was older than the previous was kind of fascinating. He had to proceed cautiously as oil and water began to flow into the opening he had made. The dirt he was clearing out had an odd appearance. He couldn't quite put his finger on why some of the rocks had distinct looks, but as he dug, something prompted him to calm down. He felt a large, solid boulder restricting the excavator's movements. Though he probably could have forced the excavator bucket through it, he chose not to. First, he wanted to see what it was, so he exited and approached. He could see that something large and possibly really significant was inside the rock, proving that it wasn't as solid as he had thought. Though he was relieved that he had stopped excavating, he now had to protect the item as well. With only a shovel in his hands, he attempted to remove the rock so that it wouldn't sink any deeper into the muddy mess while using his radio to signal for assistance. Who knows if they'll ever discover it again, or if something might happen to it. His heart was pounding, and he was breathing heavily. When he heard some of his co-workers come, he realized he couldn't finish it by himself, and was relieved to see other miners for the first time in his life. They had to assist him in keeping the rock intact. After carefully but quickly digging away the rock with his assistants, they set up planks underneath to prevent it from sinking into the mess. They didn't care that by that point they were covered in mud and black dirt. They had no idea what this was. Nonetheless, they sensed that it was crucial. The rock was still moving, and they wanted to lift it slightly to place even more safeguards underneath. While at it, they would need people from the museum to come out and tell them what they were dealing with. After climbing inside his excavator, Shawn carefully lowered the bucket beneath the rock. Never before has he been so afraid to move anything as he was at that very moment. This was a man who had worked in the mining industry with explosive materials regularly, and now he was afraid to move a rock. If only he wasn't so anxious, he could almost laugh at himself. His heart sank with what followed. Extra boards were positioned underneath the boulder, which may not have been as solid as they thought. Shawn then carefully lowered the rock once more, but as he removed the bucket, he accidentally hit it, causing the excavator to break open the rock. The miner then made the startling discovery. Pulling his excavator away from the scene, he took off running. He had to find out what the rock was hiding and how much harm he had caused. All stood in disbelief, Shawn foremost among them. He had just fractured the rock to reveal the contents more clearly, but none of them could quite believe what they were seeing. Have they discovered a dragon? Although it appeared so, they were aware that it was not possible. Maybe even cooler was what it ended up being. Scientists from the Royal Tyrrell Museum were called to come out and check. When the scientists arrived, they were startled to discover that it wasn't a marine reptile as they assumed based on its images. Rather, it was one of the best preserved dinosaurs ever discovered by scientists, petrified as one of their kind. Seeing that was very incredible. They could see that it was an armored dinosaur, but this was an amazing find because the species had never been found before. When we learn about dinosaurs, a lot of us instantly become children again, but this dinosaur was so amazing that none who set eyes on it resisted its allure. Recall how they discovered that it was a dinosaur with armor. Even though they could see it, how did they know that so fast? Not only was it fossilized, but from its snout to its hip, the organic content had converted into a stone substance. Even though it had died millions of years ago, it appeared as though it had recently passed away. Though, for the most part, we don't have a clear idea of what most dinosaurs would have looked like on the outside. People occasionally make jokes about all the numerous ways that dinosaurs might have looked, claiming that they could have been fluffy or even had feathers. But not this time. We can see this dinosaur skin, therefore we know for sure what it looked like. They could see that it would have been coated in spikes because its armored coating was still connected. It hadn't even dried out or crumbled. The dinosaur's bones and teeth were still present. To see what was happening inside the dinosaur's hard shell, they scanned it with X-rays. Even more amazing, they were able to examine its bone structure and discover that portions of its insides, including its stomach and even intestines, were still intact. As one of the scientists put it, it wasn't like they found a dinosaur skeleton, they found a dinosaur preserved much as it would have been in life. Finding so much soft tissue was surprising. It was amazing. They had no idea how it had been kept in that condition, but whatever had happened quickly. Afterward, they would piece together his story. He appeared to have just finished his last supper, and, for unknown reasons, passed very shortly after. It fell to the bottom of the sea on its back, minerals seeping into the skin and armor, and boulders gradually piling up on top of it. But it was sturdy enough to be preserved when a storm blew through, carrying him out to an old sea. Ever since the first signs of a large animal like the dinosaur were noticed, people have always tried to understand what a dinosaur is all about. So let's get into it. What exactly qualifies as a dinosaur? The clade Dinosauria comprises a diverse group of reptiles, including dinosaurs. Dinosaurs originally appeared between 243 and 233.23 million years ago during the Triassic epoch. However, the precise beginning and timeline of dinosaur evolution are still being studied. Following the Triassic-Jurassic extinction crisis 201.3 million years ago, they emerged as the dominating terrestrial vertebrates, and they remained so for the duration of the Jurassic and Cretaceous periods. As the only dinosaur lineage known to have survived the Cretaceous-Paleogene extinction event, which occurred around 66 million years ago, birds are feathered dinosaurs that descended from earlier theropods during the late Jurassic epoch, according to the fossil record. Thus, dinosaurs can be separated into two groups: extinct non-avian dinosaurs, which are all dinosaurs other than birds, and avian dinosaurs, or birds. From a taxonomic, morphological, and ecological perspective, dinosaurs are diverse. With more than 11,000 extinct species, birds are one of the vertebrate groups with the greatest diversity. Paleontologists have identified over 900 distinct kinds and over 1,000 different species of non-avian dinosaurs based on fossil evidence. Fossil relics and existing species of birds represent dinosaurs on every continent. The majority of scientists think that dinosaurs were sluggish and cold-blooded throughout the first half of the 20th century before birds were identified as dinosaurs. However, the majority of studies carried out since the 1970s have shown that dinosaurs were friendly creatures with high metabolic rates and a variety of social interaction-related characteristics. While some ate only plants, others fed only on meat. There is evidence that all dinosaurs laid eggs, and that many dinosaurs, both avian and non-avian, shared the ability to create nests. Even though dinosaurs were mainly on two legs, many prehistoric groups also had quadrupedal species, some of which could switch between two legs. All dinosaur groups shared complex display features like horns or crests, while some extinct groups evolved skeletal adaptations like bony armor and spines. Due to the limitations of flight, the modern avian lineage that descended from the dinosaur birds is typically small, but many ancient dinosaurs, both avian and non-avian, had large bodies. The largest sauropod dinosaurs, for example, are thought to have reached lengths of 39.7 meters and heights of 18 meters, making them the largest land animals in history. The belief that non-avian dinosaurs were uniformly massive is due in part to preservation bias, as huge, durable bones are more likely to survive until they are fossilized. Numerous dinosaurs were rather little. Some had a length of only 50 centimeters. The earliest dinosaur fossils were found in the early 19th century, and Sir Richard Owen gave the term dinosaur, which means horrible lizard, to these great fossil lizards in 1842. Since then, dinosaurs have endured in popular culture, and fossil dinosaur skeletons have become important attractions in museums all over the world. Due in large part to their huge stature and supposedly bizarre and terrible nature, dinosaurs have become a staple in popular literature and motion pictures like Jurassic Park. The public's enduring fascination with dinosaurs has led to substantial funding for dinosaur research, and the media frequently reports on new findings. The only dinosaurs now living are birds. Birds were regarded as a different class in conventional taxonomy, having evolved from dinosaurs, a different superorder. The majority of modern paleontologists, however, choose phylogenetic taxonomy based on presumed ancestry, in which each group is defined as all descendants of a specific founding genus, over the traditional approach of classification based on anatomical resemblance. Birds are members of the dinosaur subgroup Maniraptora, which also includes Soropods, Theropods, and Saurischians. In 2017, research by Paul M. Barrett, David B. Norman, and Matthew G. Barron proposed a dramatic reworking of dinosaurian systematics. Phylogenetic research by Barron et al. Revealed that, in contrast to the supposed union of theropods with sauropodomorphs, the Ornithischia was closer to the Theropoda than the Sauropodomorpha. They redefined Dinosauria as the last common ancestor of Triceratops horridus, Passer domesticus, Diplodocus carnegii, and all of its descendants to ensure that sauropods and kin stay classified as dinosaurs, because this would cause them to fall outside of the standard dinosaur classification. To designate the group that includes Ornithischia and Theropoda, they also revived the clade Ornithocellida. A real dinosaur was discovered stuck in a rock. Soon found to be a Boreal, it was kept in a museum where people could stare at and learn about its story. The life and times of Boreal. 6 years after it was found, the mysterious dinosaur was declared a new species to science and given a proper name. Boreal, Mark Michelli. Boreal means Shield of the North, and its species name is a nod to Mark Mitchell, the Royal Tyrrell Museum technician, who spent 7,000 hours fighting for every millimeter while freeing the dinosaur from the rock it was found in. The approximately 5.5-meter-long specimen was so perfectly preserved that researchers were able to stare into the face of a real dinosaur that lived during a time when North America was a very different place. Boreal was built like a tank and covered in thick armor, especially around its neck, indicating that it needed protection from predators. At its shoulders, a massive 51-centimeter-long spike extended out on either side. At first, it was thought these weapons could have been used for fighting other Borealopeltas, but Victoria Arbour, curator of paleontology at the Royal BC Museum, believes they could have been used for both love and war. When you see something like a huge spike, says Arbour, that could simultaneously be a signal to mates that you're in good health. Borealopelta's massive shoulder spikes could have acted like a bull's horns or an elephant's tusks, which are used in defense when necessary, but are also an indicator of status and strength. Many of the fossilized armor plates possessed a keratin sheath, which has the same material as our fingernails, along with a thin film that allowed researchers to guess at Borealopelta's color. It was found that at least one component of Borealopelta's color was this reddish-brown, says Caleb Brown, a curator at the Royal Tyrrell Museum. The pigment seemed to be concentrated on the back of the animal and not the belly, and this is consistent with this idea of countershading. Countershading allows animals to blend with their environment and hide from keen-eyed predators. However, some researchers question whether the coloration was just an anomaly of fossilization. If Borealopelta, an almost 1,300-kilogram animal, did require camouflage, it must have had some terrifying predators indeed. The terrifying dinosaur of the day, 110 million years ago, was Acrocanthosaurus, a killing machine that ruled the Cretaceous long before more well-known predators like T-Rex arrived on the scene. Could an attack from an Acrocanthosaurus have been the cause of Borealopelta's death? In a simulated test, researchers found that Acrocanthosaurus's bite would have done some serious damage to Borealopelta, and it was likely one of its main predators. But this particular specimen was found in such pristine condition, with no signs of trauma, that it must have died another way. Scientists observed the last food that the dinosaur ate, as it could reveal the reason for its demise. What did it feed on just before it closed its eyes forever? Dinosaur's last meal. The team concluded that Borealopelta most likely came to rest, belly up, at the bottom of a prehistoric sea after examining the site where the fossil was discovered. Borealopelta's stomach contents were found preserved with its remains in an incredibly uncommon find, offering crucial information about how it got there. David Greenwood, a paleobotanist, found ferns and twigs in Borealopelta's astonishingly preserved last meal. The twigs were astonishingly still in growth, suggesting that they were consumed during the rainy season when severe storms and flash floods would have been a serious hazard. Given that Borealopelta was not adapted for swimming, a sudden rise in water level on the coastal plains where it inhabited would have taken it by surprise. One can't help but wonder why the body of the dinosaur was kept from deteriorating naturally. Luckily, scientists explained as to why it was preserved. Preserved in great detail. How did Borealopelta end up upside down on the bottom if it was carried away by a flood that drowned it? About 70% of the other armored dinosaur fossils unearthed in Alberta were also found on their backs, according to Henderson and Brown's review of the historical records. According to Brown, gases built up within the body cavity as Borealopelta started to rot. The rest was just basic physics in the water. Henderson claims that the swollen body's soft belly and dense back force it to topple over. It would have had its arms and legs sticking up in the air. Borealopelta would have caught the wind and truly sailed out to sea, traveling a great distance into the open ocean with its stiff limbs functioning as sails. After that, it goes pop and it goes down like a stone, according to Henderson. The reason for the remarkable preservation of the fossil is that Borealopelta would have struck the seafloor hard and buried itself in the sand that was disturbed by the impact. The sand would have created a natural concrete through a chemical process, keeping the body contained within its own casket. Henderson and Brown surmised that Borealopelta was shielded in this way from extreme pressure and deterioration. Wrapped in this organic time capsule, the dinosaur bided its time for 110 million years, until the momentous discovery made by an Albertan miner, which revealed the secrets of Borealopelta. The dinosaur's quick underground burial has preserved its appearance from millions of years ago. It is highly rare, according to paleontologists, for its tissue to have fossilized rather than broken down. There were no shin splitting until clubs on Notornosaurs, in contrast to their near relative the Ankylosauridae. Rather, it was protected from predators by prickly armor. The Cretaceous dinosaur, at 18 feet in length, may have been the equivalent of a rhinoceros in its era. People have always fantasized about what a dinosaur looked like. Though movies tried portraying it, here's a real-life description of how a notosaur looked millions of years ago. Appearance of the notosaur. Notosaurus was an ornithischian dinosaur that reached a maximum length of 4 to 6 meters. The top of its body was covered in bone dermal plates, and it also might have had spikes running down its sides. Its body was covered in bands of dermal plates, the bigger plates placed in between the narrow bands that covered its ribs. The animal's scientific name comes from the regularly organized bone nodules covering these broader plates. Paul calculated its length to be 6 meters and its weight to be 3.5 tons in 2010. It had a short neck, 5 toes on each foot, 4 short legs, and a long, stiff tail without a club. The narrow skull featured small teeth, strong jaws, and a pointed nose. It might have eaten soft plants because it couldn't chew tough, fibrous ones. On the other hand, it might have processed the latter kind of plant using gastroliths and its massive digestive system. One of the dinosaur species, called Theropods, was known for eating meat. Let's examine how it was physically built to devour flesh. Theropods. Saurischian dinosaurs have 2 major subdivisions, theropods and sauropodomorphs. The theropods are a diverse and complex group that are famous for meat eating. There is evidence of other dinosaurs being omnivores, and there are some theropods that strayed from a carnivorous diet, but all of the famous dinosaurs with big sharp teeth are theropods. Early theropods were swift and small like Chelophysis. Its name, which means hollow form, is a reference to an important trait that all theropods share, hollow bones. This made them lightweight and therefore presumably more agile, which helps chase down prey. A less obvious but related trait they share is a series of air sacs used throughout the body in respiration, at least partially filling the empty spaces in bones. This mechanism, seen in their living descendants today, birds, also helped allow a high level of activity while releasing heat more efficiently. Their other most notable shared trait is the 3-toed feet with sharp claws. Another one of the dinosaur species, called Soropods, are an interesting bunch. When they're born, they come out very little. What happens when they grow? Let's find out. Soropods. Fortunately, the Soropods, the other group of Saurischian dinosaurs, are far less complex than the theropods. Like other dinosaurs, sauropods began very small and eventually grew to be the largest animals to have ever walked the world. Prosauropods was the term used to refer to early sauropods, but it is starting to lose its use. The ideal word for all real sauropods and their descendants is sauropodomorphs, which encompasses the entire group. Originally bipedal and most likely omnivores, early sauropodomorphs, now named Plateosauridae, may have been able to rip flesh or vegetation with their strong hand claws. Plateosaurus is the best example of an early sauropodomorph. It stood roughly twice as tall as a human and had blunt fangs. It could also reach leaves that most other species at the time could not, because of its extended neck. Some dinosaurs had unique features like horns, which cemented their predatory prowess. But what species of dinosaurs had horns? Ceratopsians. Marginocephalia is the sister group of the ornithopods. In addition to having tooth batteries, these animals also have head decorations. Marginocephalia is divided into 2 main categories. The first group is the ceratopsians, also known as horned dinosaurs. Note that not every member of this group had a horn on their face, despite the group's name. A frill, a bony projection extending from the skull back towards the neck, was far more common. The group's first members were petite with tiny frills, and they came from Asia. Protoceratops, a renowned early example, is found in Mongolia. Its name, which translates to before horned face, indicates that it had a neck frill and just the tiniest bumps where other animals' horns had developed. Dinosaurs have been around longer than the human mind can visually comprehend. But just how long ago were they discovered? Early discoveries of dinosaur. About 20 million years after the catastrophic Permian-Triassic extinction event, which destroyed an estimated 96% of all marine species and 70% of terrestrial vertebrate species, about 252 million years ago, dinosaurs diverged from their archosaur ancestors during the Middle to Late Triassic epochs. The pebbly Arcosay Formation in Zimbabwe, the Isquigualasto and Santa Maria formations in Argentina and Brazil, and the Carnian epoch of the Triassic period are home to the oldest dinosaur fossils, known to have significant remnants. Dinosaurs were not the dominant land animals when they first appeared. Different kinds of theropsids, such as rhynchosaurs, cynodonts, and archosauromorphs, inhabited the terrestrial habitats. The pseudosuchians, who outperformed the dinosaurs in terms of success, included Rauisuchians, Ornithosuchus, and Etosaurs. In the Triassic, the majority of these other species became extinct in one of two ways. First, many basal archosauromorphs, notably the Proterosaurs, went extinct around 215 million years ago. Afterward, the majority of the other early archosaur species, including Aetosaurs, Ornithosuchids, Phytosaurs, and Rauisuchians, went extinct during the Triassic-Jurassic extinction event approximately 201 million years ago. The precise period of their demise is unknown, however. Rhynchosaurs and Dicynodonts both lived in some regions at least as late as early to mid-Norean and late Norean or early Racian stages, respectively. A land fauna of crocodilomorphs, dinosaurs, mammals, pterosaurians, and turtles was left behind by these losses. Through the Carnian and Norean phases of the Triassic, the earliest dinosaur lineages underwent diversification, maybe by filling the voids left by the extinction of other species. Not to mention, extinction rates were elevated during the Carnian pluvial incident. The first American dinosaur was found in 1858 by William Parker Foulke in Marl Mines near Haddonfield, New Jersey. Although fossils had previously been discovered, their nature had not been accurately determined. The animal was given the name Hadrosaurus foulkei. Hadrosaurus was one of the earliest, almost entire dinosaur skeletons discovered. The first was in 1834 in Maidstone, England, and it was a bipedal animal. This was a very significant discovery. This was a groundbreaking discovery since, up until then, the majority of scientists had thought that dinosaurs, like other reptiles, moved on 4 feet. Foulke's discoveries generated a wave of dinosaur enthusiasm in the United States, which became known as dinosaur mania. The intense competition between Othniel Charles Marsh and Edward Drinker Cope, which became known as the Bone Wars, to discover new dinosaurs first, displayed dinosaur mania. After spending his whole wealth on the dinosaur hunt, Cope passed away in 1897, capping a battle that lasted more than 30 years between the two scientists. The pair's inhumane techniques resulted in the destruction or degradation of numerous priceless dinosaur specimens. For instance, their diggers frequently used dynamite to excavate bones. Such procedures would be considered harsh and undesirable by modern paleontologists, as blasting can quickly destroy stratigraphic and fossil data. Cope and Marsh made huge contributions to paleontology despite their crude methods together. They found 142 new species of dinosaurs, of which Marsh discovered 86 and Cope 56. Marsh's collection is currently housed in Yale University's Peabody Museum of Natural History, while Cope's is currently on display at the American Museum of Natural History in New York City. Long before humans arrived on Earth, dinosaurs were gone. We only met their fossils and bones, but let's find out why they went extinct in the first place. What caused the extinction of dinosaurs? According to the fossil record, dinosaurs underwent massive changes in shape throughout the first 175 million years of their existence as a result of environmental changes and the emergence of new species that were better adapted to the new circumstances. When dinosaurs couldn't adapt, they died extinct. But then, in a relatively short period of 66 million years ago, All dinosaurs, aside from birds, completely vanished. Large marine reptiles, ammonites, and pterosaurs were among the numerous other animals that perished. This shows that although the number of dinosaur species was already decreasing, a sudden catastrophe sealed their doom, causing adverse environmental changes to happen faster than dinosaurs and other organisms could adapt. Ecosystems throughout the world have gaps due to the massive extinction that put an end to the dinosaur era, regardless of the causes. These were thereafter occupied by mammals and birds, the only dinosaurs to survive, which both underwent quick evolutionary changes. Thanks for watching. Let us know your thoughts on the discovery found at the mining site. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content like this.